So my name's Chris Shirley.
Hi, Chris.
Hey,
um, so on this vlog, I have been interviewing people that have Parkinson's, that are related to Parkinson's, that are kind of clinicians and stuff like that. You are none of those things, but the reason I'm interviewing you is because I think sometimes people kind of put people with long-term health conditions on a pedestal and say they're inspiring and stuff like that. We need to be inspired by people, and I'm inspired by you because you do some really cool stuff. They're going to make you feel really awkward. So I wanted to kind of tell the stories of a few people that have kind of inspired me with things that they've done. And I think it's weird because actually, for someone that is physically a bit wobbly, I find kind of like an affinity with adventurers, which is weird because I kind of have adventure in my heart, I think, which is bizarre for someone that would probably fall down if I tried to do it. Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself for those people that don't know who you are? Because I know who you are.
which is everyone. Okay, so my name's Chris. I'm 34 years old. I kind of live everywhere. I'm a bit of a nomad. Well, I don't know where to start. I studied graphic design at university some 16, 17 years ago. Back in 2001, when the World Trade Center came down. I wrapped on my third year of university, so essentially I kind of grew despondent with graphic design and decided that actually I'd leave and join the army, which was a really strange decision to my family because my younger brother had gone in, and they just saw me as this kind of like creative type, who was more interested in dyeing his hair and wears lip piercings, and you can just about still see the holes in there somewhere. So I joined the military police at sprightly 19 years old. Sorry, that's a phone. At sprightly 19 years old. Oh, there we go. I was going to. Oh no, it's finished now. Sorry. Sprightly, I was like 20 years old. I had my 21st birthday in the middle of basic training. So I joined the military police. I got sent over to Northern Ireland. Spent the best part of a year and a half working with infantry battalions out there before getting selected to attend the close protection course. So essentially the army's bodyguards for senior generals, diplomats, VIPs, etc. I somehow got through that course. Went out to Baghdad in 2006 and formed part of the 10-man team that protected the British ambassador during quite possibly one of the worst civil wars that Iraq was seeing at the time. I went back to Iraq the year later and then decided I wanted to commission to the Royal Marines. So by this point I was a corporal in the army, so non-commissioned. Failed my first Admiralty interview board, so the selection for the Marines is sort of two parts. I failed the intelligence part, so after a huge amount of control of myself, I've got quite a vivid memory of almost crashing on a slip road on the motorway out of Portsmouth because I was bawling my eyes out, and some guy sort of cut me up, and my brain was still processing the failure. So it was pretty difficult. But I was successful the year after that and transferred into Marines. I spent 6 years in the Marines, going all over the place through the Arab Spring in the Mediterranean, across to America, round to sort of the Middle East, six sort of really interesting, really sort of defining years. I finished that and came out a couple of years ago, joined the BBC's high risk operations team. So the advisory body which supports all sort of filmmaking and documentary making in hostile environments. So the team are like the advisory function that kind of helps keep the BBC staff safe. I finished. I was getting quite frustrated with commuting in London, so I decided to go freelance. Became a freelance humanitarian consultant, which was ninja hard because no one tells you how to do it. I just had this idea that I wanted something a bit more purpose-driven. So I started working with charities and NGOs in war zones. I went to places like Afghanistan, Iraq, southern Turkey, and sort of really quite sort of difficult places to sort of operate in. Whilst there, I met some really inspiring young athletes in Afghanistan, and decided that I wanted to make a documentary about them. So I returned back there last year on a self-funded trip to meet these athletes, and decided that seeing a lot of parallels with my upbringing, so I was big into mountain biking and adventure sports as a youngster, that I wanted to help these athletes. So now I'm in the process of producing a documentary, and I want to go back to Afghanistan and meet these athletes again and see if there's anything I can do to help them. How did I end up in adventures? I've always been kind of drawn to challenges. Maybe it's a short attention span. Maybe it's just an inability to sit still. But yeah, I've always sort of sought things to challenge myself, and just got back from 2 months on the ocean where we just rode across the Atlantic.
Casually just drop that
in. From Portugal to South America, which was a hugely challenging trip for a variety of reasons, which did actually result in a world first record for us being the first team to go from Africa to South America. So yeah, just finally being confirmed as well. That was that we got back 2 weeks ago today, and I'm still sort of slowly reintegrating myself back into normality again, which is just the strangest feeling.
It looks like an incredible sort of adventure. I mean, frustrating at times, definitely, I would say. When I last spoke to you, you were in the middle of somewhere because you'd had to stop or something. Was that what was happening?
Yeah, so we pulled over we had to stop in Cape Verde, which is a cluster of islands off Senegal in West Africa. What had happened was the solar panels on the boat weren't giving us the sort of charge we needed to be able to run the auto helm and the water desalinator, or pretty much anything on the boat. So, having already stopped once in Lanzarote, we made the hard decision to pull over in Cape Verde as well, which was frustrating because we were adding on loads of extra time, and we really wanted to sort of get it done and get home. Because this was over Christmas and New Year. But yeah, so we pulled over in Cape Verde, and then we spoke with the Association of Ocean Rowers, who said to us, actually, if you row from where you are now to anywhere in South America, we'll be the first team to ever do it. So by virtue of a consolation prize, we cracked on once we did the things we needed to do and made it to South America.
It's not too shabby though, is it, to be fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's nicer to have done that and got a world first record, because it means that no one ever can take it away from you. Whereas we were going for the speed record from Europe to South America, which is known as the Trade Winds 1 route.
So what was the kind of the hardest thing, the best thing, and the most surprising thing about the trip, would you say?
The hardest was definitely dealing with the monotony, because you're just doing the same thing over and over again for so long. You get into a routine which is manageable, and you manage to break it down. You're doing 2 hours on rowing, on the seat rowing, 2 hours off where you'll be sleeping, cooking, answering emails, or listening to music if it's during the daytime. And it's manageable, but there's just a huge lack of variation. When you come from a society like a city like London, and you're just surrounded by constant noise, lights, just kind of sensory overload. And then you get onto a boat and you literally look at the back of 4 other guys, and you spend easily weeks at a time just walking around about a 2 meter patch of the boat, because you go from your assigned cabin to your rowing position, and for me that was the rear rowing position, and I think for about a week I didn't move any more than maybe 3 meters, and it just becomes a huge mental challenge, because you're just all you're doing is looking at ocean on people's backs, and there's a great kind of misunderstanding that rowing an ocean, you're going to be seeing like whales and sharks and dolphins and turtles, and the actual reality is that you don't see any of those for weeks on end. When you do see something, it's the most inopportune time. So I think I was using the toilet bucket one day, and I saw a dolphin, and almost jumped up and almost knocked the bucket off the boat. The best thing is this is going to sound sort of almost paradoxical, but by the end I grew to really appreciate the just like mental space. Yeah. So I found particularly last year when I was working with an NGO in Iraq during the Mosul offensive. I was incredibly busy because I was trying to keep my consulting, trying to do some really cool and interesting stuff with this charity that was new to Iraq, and what I ended up doing was just probably putting issues to the back of my mind, which I found then on the boat I was unpacking them and really thinking about them and really digesting them, and really putting them to bed, because you can quite easily run yourself ragged around the city in the UK, and what you need at times is just to be able to switch off your mobile phone and just have some utter peace and quiet to mentally sort of come down from it. I've read and heard some really interesting podcasts which say that actually being bored is one of the best things for you, because your brain in that time rewires itself and goes through these issues and mentally unpacks them and sort of comes to terms with them. And for me, being bored is just one of my greatest battles. I'm forever on my phone, forever doing stuff, and it's trying to teach myself just to be satisfied being bored is a real challenge. So that was a good and a bad thing on the boats, just how much time do you get to think.
And most surprising thing.
Probably just how much you can come to rely on other people. So I'd come from an organisation in the military which it teaches you teamwork and and how to work. So many opportunities to understand this better. But I think when you're on the boat and your mental health, with the amount of uncertainty that's been thrown at you, you really come to rely on other people. Yeah. And I think at times I've definitely just been too self-reliant in the past, and I really kind of just opened up and was just probably my authentic self on the boat. And what I found was actually it was hugely invigorating, because you draw strength off other people when you're when you're in places, and it sort of comes back as well. There's times when you're strong and you're picking people's spirits up, and there's times when you're having your own spirit picked up by the people, and it's probably one of the biggest learning factors for me to take forward is just allowing myself to rely on other people, because sometimes it's easier said than done until you're sat on an 8.5 meter boat in the middle of the Atlantic, and you're relying on other people to keep you sane. Yeah.
I find it really interesting, because when I did that boat thing that I did, which was a very different boat, very, very different boat, but if you are somewhere with only a set amount of people, and it's the same people for any period of time, you almost form like a new community almost. It's sort of, everything goes up in the air. You kind of, your traditional roles within society are kind of checked. No one knows who you are really. Well, they do know who you are, but you almost have this opportunity to fling everything up in the air and to almost kind of start again, and you find your roles and who's going to support. And it's actually really interesting. You almost create like a mini society for like a period of time. You are each other's,
Yeah.
you are everything that each other needs on that boat, and then you're back in the real world, and it's weird.
Well,
There's
yeah,
all these other people.
I totally know where you're coming from. When I was um, in the Marines, I was as an officer, so I was a captain when I left, and I've been used to being in charge of people and always being the decision maker. And one of the hardest things for me actually was to go on the boat and be the most inexperienced person on the boat. So I didn't know, I didn't know best. I didn't have any responsibility. I didn't have anyone to be in charge of, and
Yeah.
I was just literally just another boat member. I was bottom of the pecking order in terms of
Yeah.
knowledge and experience. So just reminding myself, that for one time you can be in a leadership position, or in charge of
Yeah.
of people, and then the next minute you're back to being a team member, and it's
Yeah.
you can't carry any ego into these things. You've just got to absorb it and roll with it. It was a great reminder to me, because one of the other guys was also ex-military, and we just had the most fantastically candid conversations, where all we spoke at length about time in the military, how some people perceive officers as kind of like the managers, or the authority makers, the system, and others are much more understanding. And it was nice, I think, when we're all just blokes on a boat. We're all just stinking ass guys on this on this piece of carbon Kevlar. So there's nowhere to hide. The boat will show you everything. So it was nice to be able to almost kind of prove your worth and just say, look, I may not know anything about this boat, but I'm prepared to work my arse off and and make this thing as successful as possible and support the people that are making decisions. So
Really cool.
that is a really nice timely reminder, actually, that you can, one minute you'll be in charge, but you've also got to support other people that are doing these things as well. So
It's really cool.
yeah.
When you were on the boat, what were you most excited about on returning home? Was there anything in particular that you'd dreamt about? Other than it's probably food, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember. I put it on social media. I think it was sourdough pizza and beer, because I'd lined up, what I was going to do when I flew home, and my friend who lives in London, I was like, Bags, we need to go to that, to our pizza place, because he really helped me by lending me a spare room when I was gearing up for the row, and I think for the last 2 weeks, the thought of sourdough pizza and beer was just my mental picture of when I've known that it was finally over. I'll be sat there in this pub in North London eating this amazing sourdough pizza and drinking this amazing wheat beer, which when we did it, I think I probably almost burst into tears at one point, because I breathed this huge sigh of relief and realised that I was home again and back in old UK.
That's really sweet. What was the greatest thing that it taught you about yourself? Tough question.
The greatest thing it taught me about myself. This challenge really found me wanting at times, and there was definitely some times where I was reminded just how human we are. So I lost my temper with one of the crew members, and it was a silly thing that had been sort of mounting all day. And I like to think of myself as hopefully a quite diplomatic person, and I've been, I think I've got a lot of patience, and I know people would agree with me. But this one particular day, I lost my temper with one of the guys, and it just I felt terrible for days after. In fact, I still feel terrible now. It's something which you know, I've not lost my temper and like shout at somebody in so long, but it just reminded me that you know, even as hard as you try for these things, you know, you still will surprise yourself for the better and for the worse at times, you know. So it's something which I'll take away as, you know, a surprise, something I continue to work on. You know, how I can, you know, just be more supportive of other people and you know, sort of understanding of people. Yeah, that was probably my lowest point. My highest point was again when, you know, everyone fell out with everyone on the boat. And, my highest point was just supporting the other guys, you know, and just reminding them what we're doing it's not your normal thing, and it's a bitter pill to swallow, but you do have to remind yourself that you are human, and you know, you'll err like a human. You know, we're ultimately, you're affected by biases, by, you know, hormone, by the need for food, sleep, certainty, you know, security, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was. I think probably, to stop rambling, we all learned something about ourselves which we'd never seen before. So to think that to what you said at the start, it's the reason why I think like adventure and challenge is such a, you know, a healthy thing to have in your life. You know, is it's you know, you're almost like your kind of personal growth strategy, and you know, and it doesn't have to be like rowing an ocean. It's all relative, isn't it? You know, whether it's
definitely.
Whether it's like wild camping, or if it's, you know, crossing an Arctic ice cap, you know, it's all relative, and you know, again, to kind of rambling, like, no one should ever sort of compare their own challenges to other people's, because it's, you know, it's all relative. You know, the night before we set off on the row, you know, I was kind of like so beset with like anxiety. I went for a walk to the beach and had a little cry to myself and threw some pebbles in the water, and you know, and whilst it felt really strange, it kind of reminded me that I was still alive and I was still, you know, kind of, you know, feeling emotions, and it was giving me the thing which I wanted out of it, you know, which was to, you know, to kind of challenge myself and take myself out of my zone. And whilst it was scary and uncomfortable at first, actually, I sort of realised that it was the thing which ultimately I wanted. And so, you know, I guess that's the definition of success, if you want to you know, put a label on it.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel an affinity with it, because I think for me, like, having Parkinson's feels like an adventure. Like, it's such an unknown, and it's so changeable. Sometimes it's not a good adventure, but not all adventures are good, I think. But it's kind of given me the attitude of the fact that I can try other things that are like that, and that actually I like the feeling of that feeling you're describing, where you kind of feel the worst of things to feel the best of things. Sometimes you have to kind of put yourself in a vulnerable situation and feel out of your comfort zone and feel scared and feel that kind of knot in your stomach to potentially grow, really, I think.
Yeah, totally. And it's, you know, it sounds like a glib comment, but, you know, when people say, you know, the the only place you can grow is outside of your comfort zone, it's you know, I fully believe that, you know, you only develop these skills, you know, that you need when you have to use them, and if you don't have them already, then you grow them very quickly. You know, like, you know, challenge could be, you know, like you said, dealing with Parkinson's, or going to business, or even just, you know, speaking to a stranger, you know, at times, you know, where our kind of stiff upper lip, you know, kind of British, you know, culture doesn't always allow us to sort of talk to strangers, you know, which is crazy when you think about it. You know, like the just, you know, to be able to build those skills to do these things, and you need to take yourself out of comfort zone and, you know, and do them.
Definitely.
So
I think the challenge is always then when you return back to your life, the fact that everything feels quite small. I think once you've sort of grown, everything feels quite, like, mentally feels quite little, I think, sometimes, and it's having to kind of almost then, you know, do I follow up? Do I do something else? Or do I use the skills that I've learned in a way that makes me feel that every day is an adventure? Or because I think you can very easily get kind of then caught in like a cycle of everything having to be big and dramatic. And I mean, I know for a fact, like I had a really big year last year, and I got to the point if I opened my email inbox, and there wasn't an exciting email, I'd feel like it was a rubbish day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's not a rubbish day. That's just a regular day, and it sort of like my expectations of my life had expanded, and then suddenly it was difficult to get them back to where they were. And but I've kind of had to almost fill it myself and kind of find things for myself to do and stuff like that, and find a different way around it. But I think it's all how you kind of then use what you learn during those times in your everyday, really, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting you say that. I had a phone call from one of the other team members on the row, and he sounded like somewhat troubled, and after a bit of like 5-10 minutes of talking, he was like, "Mate, I want to be really brutally honest, but I'm like things feel really weird at the moment." And he basically described the post expedition blues, which is you don't need to look very far on of other who do stuff like this, that he'd come back to normality and to this this great reception from his friends and family, and then when it kind of wears off, he was left with the cold hard real normal life again, and and it is difficult, like paying bills and doing tax returns and all the stuff which you kind of like put to one side for 2 minutes, get back to it, then and you've had to deal with all that uncertainty. You get back to normal life, and it's and then it goes back to just being boring normal life again. And sort of helping him to understand that the way he was feeling was really normal. In itself was helping me as well, because I'd make sure I'd safeguard against trying to sign up straight away to the next big thing, and actually give myself time to be bored and to have a normal life again for a while before I think about whatever comes next.
Yeah, that's sensible. So you have something. You have like a blog. It's a website, isn't it, called the Hiatus Journal?
Yes.
You blog. Can you tell me a bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was probably my inner creative wanting to do something for the world. Is the best way I can describe it. I've been doing photography kind of on and off since university, along with sort of graphic design and fine arts to a degree. So after being in the military for 12 years, I found my inner creative literally fighting his way out of me, like a scene in Aliens or something.
Yeah, I was going to say the scene in Aliens.
It's a strange analogy, but
what I had pictures.
It was around about the time when I left the BBC, and I just wanted to put something out there which I wanted to invest my own time into. Not as a business pursuit, not as a lifestyle pursuit, but I think just to kind of offer something to other people. And what it became actually was my own need to document my transition from the military, because it was something which I needed to tell other people about, because I knew there's people out there who felt the same and had the same stresses and challenges as leaving the military, and I just wanted to put it into writing. And what I found was that it tapped into a bigger kind of well of anxiety and emotion from the service, veterans community, of people who were also, I use the word suffering because at times it'd feel like you're suffering. And what it kind of spurred me on to, as people started to get in touch with me and say I've been having the same feelings, and what it spurred me on to do was just try and be more open and honest about how I was, how it was a struggle leaving the military, because you sort of spend so long in an organisation which insulates you from real life, so you're given food, your job, you change over job every 2 years, you've always got accommodation, you've always got somebody to fix your boiler, you've always got a gym near you, you're essentially just you're just given everything, which is good to do a job, but it's not good for real life. and so I started to document the challenges of transition, and what it led me on to was helping other people who are also in transition. So elite sports people who were in a similar place, that either were leaving elite sports through injury or through, just at the time had come on their career, and they were struggling to figure out what to do next because, they become used to just throwing a small leather ball, across a 100-meter field, and that all they knew. And if you weren't playing rugby, then there's not many other things you can really.
It's not massively interchangeable, I can imagine.
The military is reasonably. Transition from the military is reasonably successful because everyone needs security at some point. So there's a lot of sort of transferable skills. Whereas I really feel for these elite sports players don't have the same.
And they
the same
start incredibly young as well, don't they? So they are kind of filtering themselves into those careers quite early. Who inspires you?
During this row, I'd never had to sort of fundraise for an expedition before, and it was. Just getting to the start line was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done, just to try and fundraise, to get funds for the expedition. And what I found really, really useful actually was just listen to podcasts on the train as you're going from one meeting to another meeting, to sort of people that I especially like to highlight, Sean Conway and Levison Wood. Both for these instances where they said when the things they were doing felt scary as hell, and Sean was talking about when he swam, I think, the length of the UK, the Le Jog, and he ran out of cash about sort of 2/3 of the way into it, and he had friends who were on boats, who was burning through, kind of social capital, and then Lev mentioned about. When he was like sort of crashing on people's sofas when he was trying to make his Walk in the Nile documentary, and just hearing people being brutally honest about the difficulties they face when they did these these really inspiring things, but hugely challenging at the time, I'd imagine. It just gave me a real kind of sense of relief, if that sounds strange, that other people suffering, and that's kind of it's happened a few times in sort of like the last 12 months, and I'm a big believer now in that social media has got a positive side. Here, not having people sort of selected to be kind of in the public eye, but people who've got like yourself, who've got genuine stories of how they've overcame incredible challenges. It is much more believable and useful to us. People talk about the hard times. The more you give other people mental strength and kind of the relief to feel that they are being challenged by the things that it's entirely normal to kind of feel these the effects of these challenges, and other people have felt them as well.